This is Boo, a hamster, or more accurately, a miniature giant space hamster, and Boo is going to be my only weapon in honor mode. Boo is a familiar that can only be summoned by Minsk, a character you normally can't get until Act 3, but I used a mod that's letting me recruit him immediately, and now I'm going to beat honor mode by only dealing damage with Boo's bite attack, by having Minsk wield Boo as an improvised weapon, or by throwing an impressive 2 pounds of hamster at the faces of any and all evildoers. I'm planning on having the rest of my party support with crowd control and healing spells, and since Boo only has 20 health, my biggest challenge is going to be keeping my mighty weapon alive in fights, because if Boo dies during a fight and I can't resummon him, then I no longer have any way to deal damage. So, can I keep my weapon alive long enough in honor mode to defeat even the most powerful enemies? Let's find out. And by the way, I have no idea if using mods to recruit Minsk in Act 1 is going to break my game. I just decided to assume it'll work out. What could go wrong? Ironically, I'm overpowered at the beginning of the game. Boo has 20 health and an armor class of 20, and honestly great damage and chance to hit. This is my level 1 power spike, and it is all downhill from here. I recruited Gale to my party and gained some experience by killing a defenseless mind flayer before turning my attention to some looters. I had the brilliant idea of throwing Boo at the coiled rope here to drop this cement block onto 2 of them, which had the unfortunate side effect of slaughtering Boo as well. Lucky for me, the spell to summon Boo can be used in combat, so I could summon a new weapon, but this trick only works once because now I need to short rest before I can summon Boo again. Thankfully, I was able to claim victory with a non-stop barrage of devastating hamster bites and an occasional throw from Minsk to reposition. I short rested after the fight so that I'll be able to summon Boo again in my next battle if needed, because my next battle is undeniable proof that my level 1 power spike is already dead and gone. Now, if only I could have a powerful Raid Shadow Legends hero like the Lightsworn in my hamster challenge run, it would be no problem at all, and that's because the Lightsworn can keep hamsters alive with massive defense buffs and even revive on death abilities. But I didn't sign up for Raid using my link in the description, so I didn't start with the Lightsworn, and just look at how poorly my hamsters do in battle without the Lightsworn to keep them safe. See, that's not good at all. My hamsters got barbecued, and don't try to tell me those aren't hamsters. Anything with 4 legs is a hamster to me now. But here's the deal, if you sign up using my link in the description or pinned comment, you'll also get the epic hero Juliana when you reach level 15, who is a great attacker and excels at killing bosses. More importantly, you can use the code RAID4Kellan to get Kellan the Shrike, who can blast a bunch of enemies at once and has the ability to reduce an enemy's turn meter so they can't attack my hamsters as often, because would you look at that? Yep, up, and they're dead again. All dead. Or instead of Kellan, you could choose Oboro or Mordecai. Check out the video description for more details on them. Finally, whether you're a new or existing player, you can use the code ILOVERAID to get the Preserver, a rare champion that can debuff your enemies so much that they'll seem more like hamster chew toys than mighty warriors. Since you're starting with all these powerful heroes, make sure you join my clan so we can get revenge on the Demon Lord for killing my hamsters again and again and again and again and again. I'm sure you've heard of Raid Shadow Legends before, but if you want to give it a try, go ahead and use my link in the description so you don't miss out on getting all of these powerful bonuses to start. For my next fight, I cast Grease in the doorway in hopes that my enemies would fall down and that would stagger their approach, but I made the mistake of approaching to attack with Boo, and when Andorn swung his torch, it lit all the grease on fire. This ended up confusing the enemy AI because they didn't want to take fire damage and just kind of stood around instead of approaching to attack. I added to the confusion by casting Fog Cloud in the door, but Boo did take a decent hit before I was able to move back to my hiding spot. Shadowheart is all out of spell slots, so I threw a health potion at Boo to keep him healthy. One enemy finally decided to run through the fire and fog to fight me, only to get bit by a hamster and then for some reason murdered by a friendly fire in the form of a thrown alchemist fire that didn't even come close to hitting Boo or Minsk. I don't know what's going on here. This was very bizarre. I have no explanation other than when you play the game in weird ways, it responds in weird ways, maybe? But anyways, once the rest of my opponents were in the room, the fight became a bit of a loop in which they would try to take down Minsk or Gale. Shadowheart would help them back to their feet, and Boo would try to bite a chunk out of one of their rib cages. But in all honesty, we barely survived this fight. Like, it was barely. And these are far from the most powerful enemies I'll be facing. These aren't even close to the most powerful enemies I'll be facing in this video. I finished off the crypt by killing some skeletons, but I looted all their weapons before the fight so that they wouldn't be able to do very much damage. And my party was pretty beat up, so I didn't have any of them help, and Boo just took care of this one solo. The Druid Grove fight is a freebie since Minsk can just blow the horn every turn to give Boo and the Grove defenders plus 8 temporary health each turn, and now it's time to do a little shopping to improve my chances of success in this run. I sold a ton of items to buy the Ring of Flinging, although in this video we're not actually going to have any trouble getting what we want from merchants because we're going to exploit the game to ruin Faerun's economy. Thanks to a comment left on my last video, I now have the knowledge necessary to shift-click a merchant's entire inventory and you just move it. I could just move it into my inventory. It costs almost nothing but still gives the merchant a ton of gold, and then I can just move everything back and get a ton of gold for selling it. So I essentially just have infinite gold now and can buy whatever I want from any merchant, which will save me hours of pickpocketing time. I also made sure to send enough gold back to camp so that even if they patch this exploit out before I finish the playthrough, I'll still have enough gold for the entire game. I recruited Karlach as a bard and headed out to give my new Ring of Flinging a test run and try to get to level 3. Karlach gave my party a bard rest before heading into battle. Minsk went in first and literally just got butchered, like immediately. It was just 3 attacks back to back and he is dropped. But I can't let Minsk die, because if Minsk dies, then his familiar, Boo, will disappear. So I had my new bard Karlach come over and use Healing Word to get him back on his feet, and it's time to test out his new ring, right? Nope. Critical miss right on schedule. But this gives me a chance to explain a very weird mechanic with Boo. So anytime Boo is thrown or used as an improvised weapon, he will fall prone. But the timing of when this happens is really inconsistent. So most of the time, Boo will still be standing after getting thrown and can attack and take his turn, but he's gonna fall prone at the start of his next turn, which causes him to lose that turn entirely. This is a huge hit to my damage because Boo can deal a minimum of 7 damage when landing an attack. Now, if I have another party member who can use the help action on Boo, it'll stand him up so he can take his turn, but they have to be taking their turn at the exact same time as Boo. Otherwise, Boo falls prone at the start of his turn and loses the whole thing. So it's pretty quirky and difficult to deal with, but I'll have to manage somehow. I finished up the fight by burning through spell slots like crazy to put goblins to sleep so Boo can rip them to pieces with no resistance. And the experience from this fight plus the dialogue after the fight brought me to level 3. Shadowheart now has access to Warding Bond, which gives Boo resistance to all damage, effectively doubling the damage he can take before dying. I tried leveling Minsk up as a Beastmaster because I've never played Minsk before this video, so I wasn't sure if a Beastmaster Ranger could make Boo stronger, and unfortunately it does not. Boo truly is the strongest he will ever be, and I'll need to find a way to make it work. By the way, the mod I used recruits Minsk to the party at level 12, but I'm going to keep him the same level as Shadowheart throughout the run. Gale has 1 level as a sorcerer and 2 levels as a divination wizard, which is a little awkward right now, but eventually it's going to turn Gale into a very powerful control mage that can disable enemies while Boo rips them to shreds. With level 3 characters, I headed to the Blighted Village to see if I could defeat the goblin ambush, and I actually thought that I would be able to, but I got slaughtered. Gale died in the fight, and I ran away from combat with Karlach and Minsk. Shadowheart took some shared damage with Boo because of Warding Bond, but was otherwise not involved in the fight. I'm hitting a lot of roadblock moments pretty early in this attempt, but here's the deal. If I didn't think I could somehow manage to beat the game with a hamster, I really wouldn't have started in the first place, so it's time to experiment. I changed Minsk to a barbarian and went with Wildheart Wolfheart in hopes that it would give Boo advantage on all attacks in combat while I'm nearby and raging, but even though the tooltip says it works on melee attacks, Boo's bite doesn't seem to qualify, so it must only work on weapon attacks. But anyways, I did manage to kill 2 goblins before killing myself so I could go try something else. Since Wolfheart isn't working, I tried Eagleheart, and I put on the boots that give me lightning charges when I dash. Eagleheart barbarians can dash as a bonus action, so I was thinking I could dash, then throw Boo and get some extra lightning damage and accuracy. But first, I figured I might as well just head to the Underdark and get my gloves. The gloves I need are a quest reward for saving Bibberbang Boy. Bibberbang. So these gloves give me another 1d4 damage on throwing and improvised weapon attacks. I headed back to the Blighted Village and quickly found out that my lightning boots are not going to be a good option. They did increase my damage sometimes, but unfortunately the damage can proc onto Boo, and that just isn't going to work. Boo does not have enough health for me to be occasionally damaging him throughout a fight. And I also got the caustic ring, which adds 2 acid damage to weapon attacks, and it doesn't work either because throwing Boo is not a weapon attack. So, I mean, I might be a little screwed with this challenge run, but I'm stubborn, and roadblocks like this are only ever going to make me want to succeed even more. I still think I can do it, but wow, there's a lot of things that I thought were going to work that are just not working. So if Eagleheart isn't a good option, then we're just gonna have to go with the classic Berserker Barbarian. This lets me use my bonus action to throw Boo or use Boo for an improvised weapon attack while I'm raging. Since I have Karlach in my party, I need to take down the Paladins of Tyr, so I use Minor Illusion to get Anders split from the rest because he is the biggest threat by far because he can use Divine Smite, and here's a perfect clip to show why Paladins are so dangerous in Baldur's Gate 3. This dude takes me out with a 28 damage Pommel Strike, which is supposed to do between 1 and 4 damage, but he can smite off of it, so I am down in 1 turn. Karlach's Healing Word got Minsk back on his feet, but we really gotta take this guy down fast, and Boo did land a 10 damage hit, which is a good start. I tried to use Tasha's Hideous Laughter on Trin with Gale upstairs, but even with Karlach reducing Trin's saving throw by using Cutting Words, she resisted the spell. Honestly, rough start overall, but nothing that can't be fixed by picking a hamster up and bashing some dude across the head with it several times. It's a good thing that I have infinite money on this run because almost every single fight is burning through all of my spell slots, but by spamming Tasha's Hideous Laughter and Sleep, I was able to keep the fight under control for long enough to bash everybody across the head and beat the Paladins of Tyr. Since I've been exploiting merchants so much, I have a lot of random inventory, and I actually had a ton of options on how to deal with this dying gnome, and for my first time, I cured the gnome instead of just ripping her boots off and peacing out, and it turns out she gives you the boots as a thank you, which is nice. So with these boots, I can easily get past the Dwergar by the lake and gain access to the Grimforge. Now I was super close to level 4 at this point, so I went out in search of easy experience, and I ended up at the Burning Mansion, and if I were Counselor Floric, I would fire every single one of these guards, and maybe even accuse them of treason or something, because if a hamster can break down this door, then they're obviously not treading very hard and they're faking it. Or I don't know, maybe they loosened it for me, but I really don't think so. I was able to save Counselor Floric and even headed in to save this dude trapped under a beam. Maybe after we finish saving the world, we'll start a fire department and call it Minsk and Boo, we save you. We could even write a jingle. If you wake up in a house that's full of smoke, don't panic. Minsk is here and Boo's in his coat. If you see a drow show up with a torch, don't panic. Boo will bite a hole in your porch. I don't know, I might need to workshop it a touch, but it could work. I stopped by Lenore's tower and had Boo challenge the stool to a death match, which of course we won. And now I have the Club of Hill Giant Strength, which is gonna let me throw Boo further and hopefully add some damage through the Tavern Brawler feat, except I found out that apparently Boo doesn't really work like that. I get the Tavern Brawler accuracy bonus, but it doesn't seem to add anything to my damage. And you can see that while I'm fighting these magma methods, because it actually shows my range of damage pretty well. I land a critical strike for 17, followed immediately by a pathetic 6 damage hit, 2 of which is coming from rage. So without rage, I'm only hitting for 4 damage here. And I should be getting a +4 on top of all of my other sources of damage from my strength. So it's just not working. At least Boo's bite attack is still doing some damage. I thought I'd see if I could do some damage by throwing Boo from a great height, so naturally I tested it against Grim since he's weak to bludgeoning damage, and it went terribly. I dealt nearly as much damage to Boo as I did to Grim, and it's really not surprising because Boo literally weighs 2 pounds, so I'm just imagining Grim standing there feeling a light tap on the shoulder and being like, oh, look, there's a half-dead hamster on the ground next to me. Better stomp it. Joke's on him though, because a hamster can bite the Forge Hammer lever, and with a combination of Sanctuary and Invisibility, I was able to smash this guy the 4 times necessary to win. My game actually did crash during this fight, so I had to do the whole thing twice, but that is to be expected when using mods, and I didn't lose too much progress because I had saved right at the beginning. Still looking for as much easy experience as possible, I picked a fight with some animated armor. I lured them all next to each other, and then I moved a Susser Bloom over because it just completely disables them. They can't do anything at all. So the rest of the fight was just 37 rounds of Boo gnawing his way through their metal armor so that I could claim 300 experience points. There's an item in the Grimforge that I needed for Gale that'll make his spells harder for enemies to resist, so I picked that up and equipped it before heading over to fight fight some mimics. Given Minsk's story later on, I felt like it was appropriate to let him piss off the mimics so that I'd have a cutscene with him in it. But when it came to actually fighting the mimics, I was way in over my head. These guys have resistance to physical damage, and I can barely hurt them. I literally need to do 450 damage to them because they have resistance to everything and 75 health each. I got frustrated and just left. They'll be here later if I want to kill them. Considering almost everything has gone wrong or not how I expected so far, it felt appropriate that throwing Boo at a stalactite was no better. I wanted to crush the skeleton in the casket with a stalactite, but it turns out that Boo falls faster than the stalactite does and breaks open the casket, ejecting the skeleton right out of harm's way just in time. And because of this, Minsk started combat with his action missing, so I just had to stand by helplessly and watch as the skeleton went and freed all his buddies. They didn't prove to be much of a threat, but I was just really hoping to have an easy fight, and that's obviously too much to ask. That's not in the cards for this one. Now, for anybody who's out there questioning my sanity right now, which is fair, you should know that I do genuinely enjoy messing around in games like this because it gives me a chance to learn how game mechanics work, and I experience things that I wouldn't have seen otherwise if I was just playing normally. That being said, I really, truly thought that more of the ideas that I was going to try were going to work. I thought that at the very least I was going to have some decent damage coming out of Tavern Brawler, but it is not. That's not been happening. And I'm real stubborn, and I'm almost positive that I can do this even if I don't find anything good that works. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, because while I was editing this video, Baldur's Gate patch 6 came out, and it looks like Tavern Brawler maybe wasn't working for improvised weapons as intended, so maybe in Act 2, I'll be able to get some more damage out of Boo, and my Barbarian Wolfheart, I should be able to get advantage on attacks, so I'll have to rethink what I want to do with that. But for right now, I have some pretty strong enemies that I need to take on before I can go to Act 2. The first enemy I wanted to take out was the Boule, but unfortunately using Command Halt didn't prevent him from fleeing, so it just dipped out, leaving me in combat with some Minotaurs. Just another fail, just another one, and honestly, it's just what I'm expecting from here on out. At least the Minotaurs had jumped off the cliffside, doing a ton of damage to themselves, so they were really hurt, and I was able to finish them off for some easy experience. And I headed back over to fight the Mimics, and my plan here was, okay, Boo only weighs 2 pounds, but let's have Boo drink an elixir of the Colossus, and now I weigh 22 pounds, and can that do some more damage? Not really. Honestly, not really enough damage. It's not doing enough damage to be super worth it. I am going to try stacking it with the Enlarge spell later on. I didn't have Enlarge yet, but at some point I'll try that, and maybe we'll get enough damage to be worth throwing Boo off the ledge. But I at least found out that I need to use Featherfall on Boo when I'm throwing him from up high, because while Boo does not take damage from being thrown, Boo still does take fall damage. So if I combine it with Featherfall, then I can throw from any height and I'm good to go. I spent 30 rounds of combat beating the Mimics to death with a Hamster and having the Hamster use his little tiny mouth to bite their big mouths until finally we had them dead. And I averaged about 15 damage per round, which is not great. But it's not terrible either. It's not going to be enough for the Apostle of Merkel in Act 2 or the Netherbrain in Act 3, but I'll deal with that when I get there. I'll figure something out. The main reason I wanted to kill these guys is just because they had the wondrous gloves, so I could throw them onto Karlach, which probably isn't going to be that important, but I do have plans to use Bardic Inspiration later on to boost damage, so I figured I should have them just in case. And with that, I have all of the items now that I wanted to collect in Act 1, so I'm gonna go take out the Phase Spider Matriarch for experience and then head over to the Githyanki Patrol. Now, luckily for me, the Phase Spider Matriarch is a lot easier of a fight than it would have been if the spider was a little smarter. But these webs, it doesn't really make sense to me that the spider takes massive damage from falling, especially since it can teleport and stuff, but it does, and I'm going to take advantage of that as much as possible. So I just had Boo go onto each of the different little spider bridges and break them when the spider matriarch was here so that it would fall and take a ton of damage, and that gave me a huge boost in the fight. And the rest of the fight was pretty messy, I'll admit. It was very messy. I wasn't sure I was going to succeed, but we pulled it off. And I truly didn't have it in me at that point to finish off the rest of the spiders, so I just had my remaining characters leave the fight in whatever was the quickest way possible. Now, I'm not going to show very much of this fight because it was incredibly long and boring, but I did have the goblins attack the druid grove so that I could have help from the grove defenders, and I pretty much just threw Boo into the fray immediately, and they can't really kill Boo. They are not very good at it, so it was just long. It was just a very long fight. It felt like it was probably a bad idea to do this because I'm already using mods and the game might crash more if I start messing around, but I decided to let Volo gouge out Minsk's eye so that he could have the see invisibility eye, and, you know, hopefully it's fine. Hopefully that doesn't cause an issue later. And if it does, that's just how it goes. Now, the Githyanki Patrol is a very, very scary fight ordinarily, but for some reason, whatever I have done during this playthrough has caused them to just be hostile by default instead of talking to them. And since they're already hostile, I can lure one of them away with Minor Illusion, and so I used a series of Minor Illusions to bring her way far away from the rest of them, and actually brought them all the way over to this soldier, and they initiated combat with each other. By having Shadowheart use Bestow Curse Dread, I can make it possible to skip this soldier's turn for 10 rounds of combat in a row. I have a Divination Wizard and a Lore Bard, so I can guarantee she fails the saving throw on this cast. So now that she's cowering in dread, I can just beat her to death with a hamster while she does absolutely nothing to stop me. And she is the only tough enemy in the patrol, so I am all set to head to the Githyanki Creche. In the Mountain Pass area, I grabbed all the items I wanted from merchants before heading straight to the Blood of Lathander mace. It did take several resummons of Boo to kill all of the force field energy sources, and I even had to take a good night's rest and reset all of my short rests and everything so that I could come back and finish off the last one. But after that, I yanked the mace from its holding cell and made my way out of the Githyanki Creche, leaving it to its fate. And with that, I am all done with Act 1 for this challenge, and Act 2 will be the next video I post. But what do you think? Can I actually beat the game like this or not? Thank you, Raid Shadow Legends, for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use my link in the description or scan my QR code to start with some massive bonuses in-game.